My name is Rebecca Minnick. I'm running for Place 1. Place 1 is currently held by Mike McCullough, and my opponent is Tim Dodson. Tim Dodson is also on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I thought he was going to be here, Sandy. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, I'm going to start with my background. There are a lot of people in here that I know. I am on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've been on it for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was on the Board of Adjustments. I'm an active member of the Wimberley Civic Club. I was on the board a couple years ago, and I will be on the board again next year. And just a little point of interest, I was also on the Planning and Zoning Commission in Bel Air, Texas. So if anybody knows Bel Air, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission there. And I remember I was kind of a rookie at all this. I have a background in public relations and marketing, and I was always interested in community activities. And when I first got on there, the chair sort of talked to me, and he said, listen, he said, every vote is really important. And he said, you really need to do your homework. He said, when I first got on P&Z, I approved this condo project over here on the corner of Evergreen and Bissonnet. And he said, it's terrible, and I have to drive by it every day. And so I always have that in my head now, that you make a decision today, but it goes forever. I mean, technically it does go forever. So that always had a big impact on me. I've done numerous things in communications and public relations. Sort of the relevant thing is I was a public information officer for Friendswood Schools. So I know what it's like to be on the public sector side and have to answer those hard questions for what your administration is doing and often for what your elected officials are doing. I am now, I would say most recently, before we lived in Houston, but we came here about 13 years ago and we had a second home here. And I worked for the space program, and I was in communications and public relations for 8 or 9 years, and then I moved to the business development group. So I'm familiar with RFPs, I'm familiar with pulling together that kind of data, with going out and getting business, with spinning, if you will. The worst part of my job at United Space Alliance was when the shuttle went down. I was on that crisis communications team, and I'm telling you that there will never be anything that I do like that. People died, and we lost a treasured national asset. And so it's, I do understand sort of the gravity of that in terms of the public sector. Like I said, I think a lot of you know me. I've with planning and zoning recently, we've had some issues come up. We've had an issue on the short-term rental, and so there have been a lot of times where we've had a lot of long meetings. We've had workshops, and there's been a lot of back and forth with the community on that. And that is just one of the challenges that we're facing in this town right now. As both of these other folks said, we have an incomplete sewer system now. It's stopped. And that's a problem. We don't know where the money's coming from. We don't know if we're going to have a change of scope, or if Texas Water Development Board is going to give us the money that we need to complete this. So, as Bo said, we're in limbo on that now, and until we get some answers, it's kind of hard to say where we are on it. In terms of the ad valorem tax, I have been involved in this. An ad valorem tax set at 0 was signed off on for the design of the facilities. The revenue bonds that the Water Development Board issued say absolutely no property tax. So that the design the design project was $600,000 or $700,000, and that is, I believe, paid off. If it's not, it's within shouting distance of being paid off. So the next part of the funding is no ad valorem tax. What the Water Development Board said in its latest communication is that with the change of scope, they would likely require an ad valorem tax. And that would mean that the bonds would go from revenue bonds to tax bonds. And so, I mean, it's fairly clear. Revenue bonds, you pay back with revenue from the project. Tax bonds are paid from the proceeds of a tax on the property owners. So we have that. We also have, or I have concerns about what's going to happen to city revenue streams. I mean, we're always watching sales tax. The sales tax come from our local businesses. That's how we live. We have to support those businesses so that they can make money, so that they will support us. And I have concerns about that. Right now, we have several businesses that are on the sewer system, and if they don't get service, we're in trouble. I mean, they're in trouble, and those are some of the largest contributors to our tax base. I mean, certainly we have HEB and Berkshire Brothers and that sort of thing, but anybody who's ever been to Community Pizza on a Friday night knows that it's pretty busy. So, and Community Pizza certainly would be one of those that's affected. We also have that new memory care facility that's going up on 3237, and that also has the that they are expecting to have services, and right now they don't. I have a concern about the pipeline. I think the pipeline is a huge issue here, and it's something that unites us as people in the Wimberley Valley and our neighbors in every area. And it scares me to death to think of this area known as the blast zone. I'm worried about the noise. I'm worried about all of those things. And I believe that as a community and as a city, we need to join together with these neighboring communities to have effective opposition to this. I'm especially concerned also about traffic and parking issues. And that's something that comes up at planning and zoning all the time. If we have somebody who wants to have a new business in town, we have a parking requirement. If you're in town, there's no parking. So if we want to be able to support businesses and to, let's face it, I mean, a small business is somebody's dream. And so if we want to support people's dreams, we need to find a way to solve that parking problem. That's also a traffic problem. It's also a road problem. And these are things that we have neglected over the last year because we have been up to our eyeballs in arguing about the sewer. So I think that it's time to really figure out a way to improve people's lives here. And Bo was great about talking about his three things. My three things are good governance, protecting the environment, and fiscal responsibility. And I believe everything rolls up to that. The basis of good governance is adherence to the law. And right now, I see that there are areas where we likely are not adhering to the law. I think the issue that comes up is that we are a general law type A city. And so when we have this kind of city, we are very different from a home rule. So Austin is a home rule, and San Marcos is a home rule, and New Braunfels is a home rule. We're general law type A. We can't issue permits for STRs. There are a lot of things that we can't do. And we need to understand that, and council needs to understand that, and keep inside that lane. And so I would say that this council needs to ensure that they are educated when it comes to the rule of law. I think also we need to maintain fair processes when we are doing the city's business. And that means We create a committee, we have adequate and fair representation on that committee. We give that committee a good charter, and then we go from there in terms of accepting the recommendations of that committee. And we need to do it the same every time. We don't do it one way for this group and a different way for that group. We need to stick with a real process and a fair process. That comes to fact-based and data-based decision-making. I think that we need to rely on the professionals that have given us, that give us their counsel. And I'm talking about Texas Parks and Wildlife, Water Development Board, TCEQ. These are organizations that know their stuff. We need to respect and honor what they tell us. And I think we have to do that. In turn, those organizations provide us with objective information. When we form local committees, we are maybe not as objective as we might be. So that professionalism gives us objectivity that we really need. And then finally, and I think Eric touched on this as well, we need to have respectful and transparent discourse. We absolutely have to be civil. And I have been in school board meetings. I was a reporter many years ago, and you see what happens. Things get more and more heated when less and less is disclosed. And sometimes I've seen city councils and school boards have to take their lumps. It is a tough deal, but you've got to take your lumps. I appreciate that you want to have special meetings, but sometimes I think if you got to stay there till midnight, you got to stay there till midnight. You've got to wait and let everybody have their say. And I think, and that diversity is important to, people need to share, we need to listen, and we need to consider all input. And the kinds of restrictions that we have put on comments at the city council are absolutely unenforceable. It's impossible to do this. You need to let everybody speak, and that's just all there is to it. Finally, I think we need to honor the stakeholders of the community, and that is the chamber. It's the staff, it's the organizations that we have we have a huge number of nonprofits in this community, and we need to listen to those people. We need to make sure that we are respecting them, and that we create an environment where everybody is really, truly working together. And I think really working together, listening to each other is really the only way that we are going to be able to heal the divides in the community.